Hi everyone, again, it's Spirit House here. Um, we're reading um, The Message of the Divine Iliad by Walter Russell, and we were on part two, which is called 10 Lectures, and it was it was chapter one of part two, Man's Purpose on Earth, and I'm doing the second half of this lecture, so yes, I'm beginning with the second half. The coming age of new thinking will see the end of heathen and pagan religious practices for countless thousands, and these will become the seed for the ending of such practices in those of lesser knowing. Thus, man's search for God, which is his sole purpose on earth, will find great fulfillment in these coming days of man's new unfolding. The time has come for all mankind to know that there is nothing which stands between him and God, and that no man who has lived within a mere few thousand years out of all eternity should be worshipped in place of, or even as a symbol of, the eternal God of all creation, who created these men as he created you and me. All God worship through man is as idolatrous as the worship of God through graven images is idolatrous. When man knows God, truly knows him, he will no longer need to sense him through formed images. The time has now come when men must again be transformed into higher beings through new comprehension. In the cycle in which Jesus lived, he could not even tell his people those things. He would tell them today. He then said, I have yet many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. Now we are ready for the new knowledge. We are ready for our new day. In the last 100 years, we have been made ready for it. Our comprehension is greater. We know that what happens anywhere happens everywhere. Even 1 century ago, man did not know that. We have been prepared to know things that man of 100 years ago could not even begin to understand. God has raised our comprehension so that we shall understand him when he talks directly to us through the silent voice of inspiration. God has prepared us through his messengers, the mystics, geniuses, poets, and musicians who have given us our culture. He has talked with us through his rhythm of the heavens by making them a part of us to quicken us with their ecstasy in our search for the kingdom of heaven. In this age of transition between sensing and knowing, we must acquire cosmic knowledge through the eyes and ears of the spirit instead of those of the body. We must know how to find God by getting away from the body. We must know how to talk to God so that we know the nature of God. Moreover, we must know and obey God's law. Many people say the secret of light, which is a side note, that it's another book that Walter Russell wrote. It's excellent. I would recommend it. Many people say the secret of light is quite over my head. I get a little bit at a time. Thank God if you even get a little at a time. The reason you get a little at a time instead of much is simply because the transition from sensing to knowing is a difficult one. If you have been accustomed to acquiring information through the senses, that habit is so strong that you just try to memorize what your senses have recorded on your brain instead of closing your book and talking it over with God directly. That is the only way you can know anything. Your failure to understand is because the sense records you have engraved upon your brain have no understanding in them. Knowledge is cosmic. When you take your sensed impressions into the light of yourself and ask that knowledge be revealed to you through the light, then you will have the knowledge concerning what you have been reading, and not until. How often you have heard the expression, be still and know. To be still for the purpose of knowing is to think your information back into the light of your inner self until you have stopped thinking. Silent meditation fixes that information into your consciousness as knowledge. Very few people do that. They are quite content with storing vast quantities of information upon their brains. Very few know that they can talk it over with God by thinking it back into his still light, which they also are. Those who do know that acquire those who do know that acquire great knowledge and power to co-create with God. Thinking is not easy. If you study music for the first time, you will find that out. You will be lucky if in half an hour your brain is not too tired to remember anymore. You have only learned a few notes and made a few sounds which are not music. It takes months and months of doing that before you know music well enough to produce music instead of sound. Until that which you read from the notes reaches your very soul, you do not know music, nor can you produce music. For this reason, everyone should bend every effort to make the transition from sensing to knowing, so that his creation can be powerful and masterly interpretations of the light of all knowing, instead of being parrot-like repetitions of memories stored in one's brain, as information is stored in an encyclopedia. It is only through thus adding to our knowledge that we become transformed into a greater awareness of our immortality. Like the little parts of the complex machine that serve their purpose only when they become one whole, so do we know our purpose on this journey only when we are enabled to forget our separateness by knowing the whole. A man with a certain name lives at a certain address and thinks of himself as separate and apart from all creation. A brook comes from the sea by way of the heavens. It seems to be a unit which is separated from everything else, but it is forever connected with the heavens and the sea. We do not see the connection between the heavens and the brook, but they are, nevertheless, forever connected. Though we cannot see the connection, we can know it. Likewise, man cannot see his connection with his source and the universal sea of light, but he can know it. That is the very essence of the transition man is now undergoing, which will transform him into a higher being. The transformation will come through man's greater awareness of the light within him. The more a man becomes transformed through knowledge of the light, the more he knows that his purpose in life is to find God in order to become one with him. And that is the end of Lecture 1, which again is entitled Man's Purpose on Earth. In my next video, I will be covering Chapter 2 of his lectures called The Law of Balance.